says go live because this one will be a little bit or a lot bit more interesting than that little Atlanta show. It was fun.
Yes.
All right. 3, 2, and 1. Kyler Murray could be the number one fantasy football quarterback. That is not even a bold statement. That's not out there. That's not anything. It's just a statement of reality in this system, the Cliff Kingsbury system, and of course, one that teams didn't necessarily get a hold of. Maybe that changes over the offseason, Bloom. You always get found out in the NFL, right? There was a time when Chip Kelly looked revolutionary, and then he got found out. So, Cliff Kingsbury, what do you do for an encore? And what do you do with DeAndre Hopkins now? So we can't really bring up Kyler Murray without the new big acquisition of superstar wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. And it's not just the rushing, it's the passing, it's the system, it's him. Kyler Murray is the number one fantasy football quarterback at the end of the season. I wouldn't be shocked. Bloom, where does that mean you have to take him?
It means you got to take him between the third and sixth quarterback. Sometimes he's third, sometimes he's sixth. More likely to be third than sixth. Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson. These are the other quarterbacks that you're going to weigh in that second tier. But setting the big scene, Cease, for the Cardinals. What an offseason. Like you said, there's the DeAndre Hopkins trade. They get Isaiah Simmons at number 8. So even though their arc is starting to go up as a franchise, they still get a franchise-changing player in Simmons. And it's exciting times. If you are a Cardinals fan, it's exciting times you have Kyler Murray. And Cease last year, let's be fair, although he did some breathtaking things, he looked like a guy who just now started to concentrate on football and is very rough around the edges as a quarterback. But that means there's a lot of room to grow. Didn't have a typical offseason this offseason, but still, in January of 2019, we weren't even sure if he was going to be in the NFL. You also have DeAndre Hopkins. And we were super excited about the Cliff Kingsbury offense last year. Didn't exactly come to life in brilliant colors, but is it because of the wide receiver play? Does DeAndre Hopkins set in motion a chain reaction now where Larry Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk can do more, Kyler Murray can do more, plus they've got Kenyon Drake. So this offense might be a lot more vibrant, and Cliff Kingsbury hopefully is aggressive. We know that Kyler Murray can be aggressive. Let's see if he starts to evolve as a quarterback. Probably a little over-aspirational to take him as the third or fourth quarterback when you could get Dak Prescott there. But at the same time, I'd love to see it as much as anyone.
Had to sneeze. Now, Alex, asks in the chat room, like Watson or Murray better, Bloom? Go time.
Probably Murray, just because it's the Hopkins factor, right? Like, who has DeAndre Hopkins? Right. But that just shows how much of a quarterback helper he is. Both are going to add with their running. It's not something that I think is clear. Also, Houston's, I just think with Watson, there's a little more injury risk, although Murray was, I think it was week 16 when Murray got banged up last year with the hamstring. So I just like to catch that upward arc and not get caught in the downward one, and DeAndre Hopkins determines that for both of these guys.
Yeah, and the nice thing about Cliff Kingsbury, Bloom, is you know what Kyle Shanahan says about play calling?
Mm-hmm.
I want to score on every play.
Right.
Like some coaches, and I get it, right? It's the beauty of football. Like you can set up and you run here and you run this and play and you're doing this route, and then the next time it's not a hook route, it's a hook and go route. And like, so there's setup involved. And then there's coaches like Cliff Kingsbury, like Kyle Shanahan, who are like, didn't score? I got to call another play? Like, that's their mindset. And because of that, how many times are they I mean, seriously, with that offense, Bloom, how do you stop it? How do you stop it?
Well, and again, it's those added dimensions like Hopkins and Drake. And maybe that aggressiveness that you're talking about is something that now can come to life with that personnel. Offensive line, we'll see. They've got to get better tackle play, hopefully. But again, Kenyon Drake for an entire off season now integrated into this offense, not just showing up mid-season. Guys like Hakeem Butler and Andy Isabella and Dan Arnold, these can be players that are schemed open and make big plays because of the problems the other players give you, and Kyler Murray making you play 11-on-11 football. So yeah, let's hope this is exciting. And see, let's hope this turns into a 3-team division now. It's usually Seattle, San Francisco, with San Francisco down for a bit there. Now Arizona says, no, I mean, hey, they played San Francisco straight up in both games last year.
And you don't say 4-team division?
Well, the Rams, it's McVay. I didn't even think about that, which shows you where I'm at.
We'll get to the Rams in a little bit, but let's do this, Bloom, and want everyone to stay healthy forever and ever and ever. But because of the system, but because of the weapons around him, Kyler Murray goes down and Brett Hundley comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Is there fantasy value there?
Well, because of running ability, but even last year when we saw him get in there, he's still so limited as a passer. We're talking more like EJ Manuel.
What if they got Colin Kaepernick?
Right. That's what we're waiting for. I think a couple of months ago, in some circles, there was talk that it was kind of a foregone conclusion that he was going to play, but now that's all simmered down. Other things have taken the headline since then. So, yes, Colin Kaepernick. We saw Colin Kaepernick was with Chip Kelly, right, in San Francisco last. We saw him very much fantasy relevant.
Okay, let's move to the running back position, which is very much fantasy relevant because Kenyon Drake got away from Adam Gase. So Kenyon Drake, go time, and go time for your fantasy team.
Yeah, you got to take him in the first round if you want him, Cease. Kenyon Drake, first rounder, and this is one that we watched him in Miami at the end of, I think it was 2017. He won leagues for you. He finally got a chance to be the starter, and wow, he really blew us away. And then Adam Gase. Adam Gase wouldn't make him a starter in 2018. Then last year, he wasn't a lead back. It was the Kalen Ballage follies along with Drake. He goes to Arizona. He gets a chance to be the lead back at the tail end of their David Johnson tragedy, and right after Chase Edmonds breaks out and then hurts himself. And Drake takes the backfield over and all the things we liked about him. Drake is an example, Cease, of patience being rewarded. Oftentimes, I know this is one of my biggest mistakes in fantasy, holding on for too long. But if you held on to Drake as a guy that could be elite if he ever got a chance, he got his chance and he was elite. But in the first round, Cease, ahead of Nick Chubb, would I take him over Joe Mixon? That's tough. It's tough just because it still is a limited track record. If you go by what he did last year, he won leagues for you in week 15 and week 16. They clearly favored him as a feature back. And will Chase Edmonds do more? I think that's the next question. But now they have three guys. This is a different model, right? You have the Thunder and Lightning model, or you have the Thunder and Lightning in the third down back model, or something like that. But then in Arizona, you have three guys that can basically do everything you ask them.
Mm-hmm. And let's get to those other guys because Drake and I'm not taking him over Nick Chubb. I'm not taking him over Joe Mixon. And you think of all those receiving weapons, right? And then you think of the running backs that you must mix in, including Chase Edmonds, who is a very versatile, all-around threat as well. I'll throw in Eno Benjamin, Bloom.
Yeah.
Talked to Herm Edwards about him. I talked to Herm a couple of times before the draft, actually, to get hot takes about him. Eno Benjamin specifically, it's that speed. It's the fact that anytime he touches the ball, he can score, and he's always looking for the big play. That's also a double-edged sword because I think Benjamin will dance too much at times. But now you just can't, go to Drake all the time. You've got these other assets who will have to be used.
Sprinkled in. But, even if Drake gets 70, 65% of the work, that gives him the opportunity you hope for to be good on that first round pick. So we'll see. But Edmonds is exciting. Yeah, Edmonds has great receiving ability. Edmonds in that game against the Giants just showed that he meshed well with the play calls. In real time, he was processing things in the framework that the play creates so that when he saw things coming together, vision, his acceleration allowed him to just get to the second, third level of the defense instantly and score those touchdowns in that game. And it was an exciting game for him. And it was a bread and butter running game based offense that day that he took advantage of. So absolutely 15th, 16th round on, Edmonds is exactly the guy you want to target. Again, this limited sample size. We know Edmonds is good. We know this is going to be a good offense. And then Benjamin, and see, we watch running backs every year, right? I know running backs, watching college running backs, it's just fun. What do you do for fun? Watch college running backs. Well, that's who we are. That's why you listen to the show, right? Benjamin was a third or fourth round quality back. In a typical year, Benjamin is a third or fourth round quality back. In other words, is he going to absolutely be slated and drafted as a starter and run away with his backfield? No. But can he at least contribute in the NFL and maybe in the right situation, rise above for fantasy and hold on to a backfield or be a significant role player in the NFL? Absolutely. and he has a well-rounded skill set. As you said, maybe not the most disciplined runner, and I'm not saying that this is who he is, but in the vein of like LaShawn McCoy. You remember LaShawn McCoy and how he had to tighten things up and how he did? I'm just saying players can learn to do that. Running backs can learn to do that. So if Drake goes down, Edmonds goes down, and Benjamin's the starter, see, if we were to do a third string running back fantasy power ranking, Benjamin would be really high.
Yeah, he would be really high. Super quick back on the Edmonds thing, Will. Yeah. Just imagine a world where Edmonds is the guy and Drake's not in Arizona. Wouldn't we be as excited about Edmonds as we are about Drake?
Well, maybe I would.
I would.
I would. I mean, maybe not to the tune of a first rounder, but at least as excited as we are about Devin Singletary, which we're not as after Zach Moss. So, fourth round pick, third round pick, maybe third round pick. We should be though. And in Dynasty, I think that he had his big coming out party against the Giants, and then everything shut back down. But Drake's only on a transition tag. Edmonds is still under contract next year. Edmonds is still showing that he's a good NFL running back.
I just got to give it up. DJ Foster still kicking in the league, so. And there's a receiving back, a little Golden Tate to his game. Let's talk about superstar DeAndre Hopkins. New home, exciting offense, wants to prove Bill O'Brien wrong. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins was already great, but is there kind of a bounce even further? Like we see when Kenyon Drake leaves Adam Gase, like when you get out of a bad coaching situation, and Hopkins was already supremely productive. Does he have a little bit more now, or how does he mix in with all of these receiving weapons, all of these running weapons that the Cardinals have?
The targets are going down. I mean, he's just not going to get as many targets. It's really difficult to paint a picture where he gets the target share and the number of targets he got in Houston, which again goes back to our Houston analysis. This is going to be a bit more of a spread it around offense, I believe, but it's going to be a morally efficient. What the heck is going on with my brain? A more highly efficient offense per target, you would think. It will create more opportunities for Hopkins to have bigger plays. Still, Kyler Murray is not Deshaun Watson as a passer. He's not there yet. So that if offense overall is better, the quarterback's not as good. He dropped from a number 5 overall pick, mid-first rounder, to 15, 16, mid-second rounder, about wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 5. I don't know if that's enough of a drop, Cease. Not in a year when wide receiver just goes on for miles and miles and miles. Everywhere you look, every round, you're like, I see a wide receiver I want to take, except maybe the first and second. So I'm probably not taking Hopkins. I want to see it be a smashing success, but we know a lot of Hopkins' value also for those games where he got an inordinate number of targets, and that's just not how I see this offense going. But for the team to feel like, yeah, we're credible, for the team to go into every Sunday thinking like, we're the problem that you have to deal with. We're not an upstart anymore. Adding Hopkins does that.
Yeah, adding Hopkins does that, and then some, because you still have Steady Larry, I guess, Larry Fitzgerald, and then Christian Kirk, healthy, effective, and explosive in his own right.
So again, we're lowering expectations, although Fitzgerald is not really on the fantasy radar anymore. So Hall of Famer, he'll have some best ball games, but late in best ball drafts. Christian Kirk, we were excited about last year. We thought he's going to get so many targets, and he had his moments. It can be an inside, outside receiver in this offense. He can be a deep target. He can be a run after catch threat. He can do a little bit of everything. Maybe he's not the best wide receiver at any of these things on the roster, but he's good across all of these areas of the game. He's not fashionable, not in vogue right now in fantasy drafts. So you're going to be able to get him cheaper. If you like this offense and you think it'll create overachievers, getting him around the 9th, 10th round, I'm not against that. But Cease, I'm also interested in the guys after these three. Because again, when we're having to think about an offense where you have to put Pharaoh Cooper and you have to put Demire Byrd out there and Trent Sherfield or whoever else they were putting out there last year. Mm-hmm. Now that extra wide receiver is Hakeem Butler or Andy Isabella or somebody that can really be a matchup problem and create big plays. I really feel like DeAndre Hopkins can unlock dimensions in this offense that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah, and that's where you get excited about the team this year, but you also get excited about the team in the future. As you mentioned, Drake's transition tag. Larry Fitzgerald's not going to play forever. Andy Isabella's got that legit 4.2 speed, girl. And, of course, Hakeem Butler's got that size and that my ball mentality. So those two, just in general, as their fourth and fifth receivers.
Right.
Like that's if we were to rank fourth and fifth receivers around the league, they'd be the best.
Well, and think of it as like a defensive coordinator, and you know what the deficiencies are in those extra defensive backs that you bring out on passing downs, and now they have to match up with Isabel's speed or Butler's long frame. That's a problem. So maybe not fantasy relevant this year, but for Dynasty, these guys have been kicked to the curb in Dynasty after both having considerable groups backing them, and obviously the Cardinals like both of these guys. So I think these guys help the argument to take Kyler Murray if you're zeroing in on him, or just this offense being more interesting, more fun to watch. And preseason watch list, very interested to hear what these underachievers do. Butler, we didn't even get to see to play. Isabella, we saw his speed, but you wonder, is there more to the story of why we didn't see him in a year when, again, they were putting some guys out there that were very underwhelming, including Keyshawn Johnson, who was the rookie who got on the field right away because of his route running, because of his more polished game. Didn't translate to fantasy relevance. So he's probably the least exciting now.
Well, and let's just be honest, Bloom, to be honest, are these rookie receivers last year, and let's throw Keyshawn because I was going to bring him up next, of course. Are they just normal receivers where it's going to take them a couple, 3 years to get going, and then Andy Isabella takes off because Andy was at UMass, right?
Right.
Wasn't seeing the greatest coverage. And by the way, at the Senior Bowl, he wasn't as standout as his speed stood out, but you could tell Andy wasn't used to, more physical, more talented coverage. So, dynasty perspective, I'm certainly having patience with these Cardinals second-year receivers. Okay, let's talk about Charles Clay. Let's talk about Max Williams if we have to. But, in the Max Williams, Clive Walford, Blake Bell sweepstakes, the answer was none. But now Arizona has him at tight end. He's a big blocker. Charles Clay out there. He'll catch a few passes, but nothing terribly exciting.
Cecil, I don't want to embarrass you. Charles Clay's not on the team.
Oh, this is where the magic of editing. See, YouTube, you get to see this. Well, we got to change our depth charts too.
Sorry, Bob Henry.
Yeah, okay. Well, what the hell? Well, then it's just Max Williams. Okay, let's talk about him.
Yeah, and I'll get that message to Bob. Max Williams is a blocker. See, who we want to talk about is Dan Arnold. Arnold was picked up late in the season, slipped through the Saints' fingers, and he is a big wide receiver, small school player, and he immediately made a play in the corner of the end zone for a touchdown when he joined. And that's something too when you claim someone on a practice squad, and then the first week they score a touchdown. Not practice squad. I think maybe they were trying to slip him through or something like that. So the first week scores a touchdown and has week 17, big game, huh? And Kyler Murray's even said, I haven't played with someone like Dan Arnold before. I haven't had this kind of target. And where did the Cardinals struggle last year? What was the problem? Red zone, touchdowns.
Red zone.
Dan Arnold catching them touchdowns. So especially in your FFPC, best ball, deep PPR, tight end premium leagues, Arnold is someone I'm watching, if not to be on the waiver wire watch list, maybe even to throw a late round pick at deep dynasty leagues. You want to be monitoring this guy. Again, when the Saints show interest in an undrafted free agent skill player, we take notice. Arizona took notice, and they might have found a diamond in the rough.
Well, week 17 is also a lot like the preseason, where a lot of times it doesn't count, but it does matter. What Dan Arnold do in week 17? 4 for 76 and a touch.
Yep.
So that's 3/4 of his production from all last year in one game. Message. All right. Message sent and received for the Arizona Cardinals. We're going through the NFC West. And Bloom, you said a 3-team race, not a 4-team race. Why aren't the Rams in the race? Oof. And that running back situation. Issues, complications. We'll get to them next. I love my Dan Arnold take.
Yeah, got to send a note to Bob. Bob. Let me see Bob.
All right, let's go for the Rams in 3, 2, 1. When Jared Goff can have Sean McVay in his ear right up till 15 seconds before the snap, he's really good. And then if it has to go underneath that and you adjust your defense, then he's not so very good. This Rams offense without Todd Gurley and with a trio of running backs with two tight ends, honestly, even with Higbee's emergence last year. Of course, Brandon Cook's moving on. Like, you've got a lot of moving parts here, but it comes back to the guy who gets the ball on every play, and that's Jared Goff. And Bloomy's just not that exciting. Yeah. Just not that exciting and not that good, not showing that development that you would expect by this time of his career.
Yeah, and this is the problem, especially with the cap issues of having this much money tied up on this quarterback. The offense, here's the big story. I mean, the big story of the Rams is you get this close, and now you're not even in the conversation that it's 14th division. The problem here is that this team last year looked very much able to compete against teams where they could use their advantages on offense, but didn't have a counterpunch when they couldn't. And we saw them change their identity on offense over the course of the season, where they went more from a 3 wide receiver offense to a 2 tight end offense. And that is kind of, for fantasy, what all of the analysis revolves around now. Is it more of Cooper Kupp or Tyler Higbee, if we're using those two as like the fantasy stars? Is the running game still very choppy? Even you lose Todd Gurley, at least he did add some verve to the offense as a downhill runner, and he got better as the season went on, really, and he was able to finish, still able to score those touchdowns. So you're asking this offense to redefine itself. You're asking Sean Payton, for as much as he was pointing the finger at the defense, Cease, Wade Phillips, how did he not get hired somewhere? Cease, let's bring him on the show. We should really just invite Wade Phillips to hang out with us on the show. I would love that. Does this offense still need to stay a step ahead? Goff was good against bad defenses. Okay, you can play him as a matchup play, maybe as a quarterback 2 in Superflex, but don't let the year-end numbers fool you. There was a stretch, Cecil, the whole month, right, in November, didn't throw a passing touchdown, the whole month. So I think that Jared Goff, in a year that's deep as ever at quarterback, you can do better. You can do better in the same round he's going in.
Yeah, you can do better, and I don't even really think there's a follow-up. Talking about Jared Goff is uncomfortable.
Because who's the backup?
Exactly.
John Walford.
And Jared Goff, as pointed out in our incredible chat room, it was Gary. Mm-hmm. He's a robot.
Yeah.
He's a robot. So
a very rich one.
Oh, look at this. Our dude Calbuto says the Rams are my biggest. I told you so the last year. Mm-hmm. Well, in football. Yeah. Yep, that's right. Now, what's going to happen to the running back situation? Because it's going to be all three. And there's been various reports. You want to talk about drum beats, but drum beats that are very odd. Drum beats of, well, it's Henderson and Akers, and then, well, the Brown. So we've heard conversations about all of them. And then we've heard conversations about all three being used at the same time. All different skill sets. Cam Akers comes in as the rookie. Malcolm Brown there. Darrell Henderson already there as a second-year guy. Hell, John Kelly's probably better than he's performed if he would ever play up to his potential. But let's just talk about those three initially. Akers being the new guy, perhaps the one, and I do believe current ADP, I can look this up, right, where Akers is going off the board, I believe, before anybody else in the Rams backfield. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, yeah. Well before.
Yeah. And he's like running back 26, I think, top of my head. Mm-hmm. I wrote about it last week on the Newswire. And then I think that's followed by Henderson, correct? But Henderson is like running back 49 or something like that. So, you look at these guys, you go, okay, running back 26, by the way, I'm reading what I wrote on July 21st. Running back 26 for Akers currently, and running back 50 for Henderson. Okay.
So the price is right. I mean, in the sense that Akers is good, right? Can we say that, Cease? Akers is good? I mean,
yes.
Bad offensive line in Florida State, not always used correctly. 3 down back, can run routes even out of the slot, good pass blocker. So he can take over this backfield. Now, we've got Sean McVay up in the corner here saying, well, I saw what Kyle Shanahan did with his backfield. I liked that, I like that. Just
right.
Balance, let everybody have a fair shot. Now, granted, he didn't say committee as if that's the last word. It's more like you go in with the idea of a committee, and then you let merit determine who gets touches. Hot hand, he mentioned, Ugh. So he also said all 4 of the backs they have are NFL starting quality. So I don't know if that makes you take him less seriously. Akers is the best all-around talent in this group. No off-season coronavirus ramp up, etc. We're saying, look at the other guy. Look at Damian Williams. Look at Marlon Mack. Well, those other guys had success. Not so much for Darrell Henderson. I don't think they were using the right way. But I also don't think Cam Akers will be best as a zone running back either. So I don't know. Maybe they go to more gap, more downhill running. Henderson's so cheap. So here's the stance on Akers. I'm not going to tell you not to take him. He's a 5th-round pick or maybe a 4th-round pick at running back, a tough position. And just be patient. If you take Akers, be patient. It might not happen right away. And Henderson should get a larger opportunity, or as large opportunity he'll get at the beginning of the year, as we're seeing in this backfield sort itself out. I'd love Henderson coming out of Memphis. The first year was a bad indicator for him. However, at the price, and we like having that early season waiver wire flexibility piece, especially this year. You watch Henderson for a game or two. If he doesn't pop, you toss him back because the price is so cheap right now. Fantasy has really moved on from him, even though it was Gurley that the Rams moved on from. And then Malcolm Brown we all forget about. Last year, it seemed more exciting because he was coming into the year inheriting a running game that made C.J. Anderson off the street look like an all-pro. Last year's running game wasn't like that. Offensive line wasn't like that. So that's where Malcolm Brown probably belongs. And if he can get the goal line carries, as has indicated, that was his role at the beginning of the year last year, it ruins this whole thing probably.
Yeah.
So maybe the right answer here is just none of the above.
Yeah, I'm avoiding this backfield like the plague. And by the way, 50 for Darrell Henderson. You want to know who's around him?
Yeah.
Chase Edmonds at 47. I'm taking Chase.
Sure.
Tony Pollard.
Okay.
Tony. Antonio Gibson. Now I have a man crush on Antonio Gibson. So yes. Duke Johnson right behind him.
Okay.
Boston Scott, Justin Jackson, AJ Dillon.
Well, there you go. So maybe if he falls around past.
And Nyheim Hines at 56. That's just wrong.
In pen.
That's just wrong.
On my draft sheet, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We don't
John Kelly.
John Kelly. Yeah, I mean, he's
contact balance.
He followed up Alvin Kamara at Tennessee and looked pretty good, and then gets to the pros and can't do anything. So, okay, all right. Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, and Josh Reynolds. Now, there's some interesting names where I'm avoiding the backfield like the plague. I am looking at obviously Cooper Kupp and everything that he can do. Robert Woods having that steady fantasy value, performance, consistency, and then I look at the upside of Josh Reynolds. And I get excited about the upside here of Josh Reynolds, who, okay, got to get out there. So only played in 7 games, 5 games last year, but there is that athletic upside. This team's moved on from Brandon Cooks. Preseason watch list. Obviously, I'd really be watching what Josh Reynolds is looking like.
Yeah. Well, if you think this remains a 3 wide receiver offense, then Reynolds becomes interesting as a downfield target.
Which it may not because of Gerald Everett. We're going to get to that in a little bit.
Right. So that's the whole thing. Because, the skeleton key to protecting this offense is, do you think it's more like first half of the year, more 3 wide receiver, or second half of the year, more 2 tight end? And then we go from there. So let's start with Robert Woods, because Robert Woods was better than you think last year. Remember, he had that 1 week personal thing he had to take care of, and he really came on at the end of the year when we all started tuning out because we knew the Rams weren't going to make the playoffs, and November happened, and Jared Goff was embarrassing. Then Robert Woods had a great end of the year, and he should be the first Rams receiver off the board because he plays in every down formation. He fits in this offense no matter how the roles are doled out. Not so much Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp still was fantasy relevant in the second half of the year, but his end of the year wide receiver 1 numbers were based on the first half of the year. And you just have to think that Cooper Kupp is going to be somewhere in between, but I think his ADP doesn't reflect that. So you're probably avoiding him in the 3rd round. I'd be avoiding him in the 4th round, maybe even the 5th round. I don't know. I mean, I'm taking Woods over him, and Woods is
Kupp's early 4th, 403 right now, wide receiver 15, and Woods is wide receiver 18 at 408.
Yeah, I'll take Woods over Kupp, and we'll see as fantasy football hive mind starts to push these 2 together. Probably not taking Reynolds, partially because so the other thing is we're looking at personnel moves and how it signals what a team is looking ahead to. The pick of Van Jefferson, I don't know if it necessarily means they're looking ahead to Cooper Kupp leaving in free agency, although, again, now with this news of a potential $175 million cap floor next year, teams that are already up against it, even more up against it. Oh, the Steelers are going to lose so many players, Cecil. I'm going to cry. So Van Jefferson could mix in. He can be an inside, outside guy. There's a lot of potential change coming for this offense that had a lot of change during last year.
Yeah, lots of change coming for the Rams. You mentioned Van Jefferson there. Some down at the Senior Bowl wasn't terribly impressive, but still a player to watch. Certainly, dynasty perspective, you're going to watch him. Do you want to talk more about Van Jefferson or just skip to tight ends?
Yeah, well, not going to totally skip to the tight ends because I get a chance to mention a Syracuse player at least. I don't think about this year. Van Jefferson's coming off of a foot injury, I think. So you don't know coronavirus ramp up and things like that. And if there is an injury at wide receiver, they don't have depth like they did with Josh Reynolds to just keep the 3 wide receivers. That's very viable. So that's something else to look at. Jefferson's not getting any respect in dynasty leagues. Sometimes I'll see him even in the 4th round available in rookie drafts.
Because he's not Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, exactly. The other Jefferson. He's just a very solid talent, but not necessarily a flashy talent. They got Greg Dortch, who came out a little early, more of a return man, speed threat, maybe a speed slot kind of threat, and Tristan Jackson, a deep ball, go get it guy from Syracuse. So, but it's thin at wide receiver, not so much at tight end. You're pretty strong at tight end.
Yeah, really strong at tight end. Tyler Higbee going off as a top 10 fantasy tight end. His current ADP is tight end 9 at 7-11. Higbee getting it done last season, of course, and now fantasy GMs are wanting him to repeat that. We've already known, and we've always known, ever since he came out of Western Kentucky, like Tyler Higbee's got this rare combination, certainly got the size, athleticism, movement ability, and 69 for 734 and 3 touchdowns sounds pretty good. Was worth the 9th spot at the tight end position last season, but there's Gerald Everett. Gerald Everett is no slouch either when it comes to a size and speed combination. Now, not as big as Higbee, but 6'3", 239, and can get out and scoot. And you look at him, okay, as kind of still that ascending player and a guy that's going to chip away, 35, 40 catches, no matter what Higbee does. So let's talk about this very talented Bloom, but it leads to complications for both of these players.
Well, this is where you have to take a stand, right, with Higbee. And even if you don't take a stand and say, I'm not sure, which means you're probably not taking him, that's still a stand. This is a unique case we have, Cease. And I'll be curious what you think, at least your first blush on Higbee. And then I'll tell you what I think. Okay. The number 1 fantasy tight end down the stretch last year, Tyler Higbee.
Mm-hmm.
So we know he can produce. It was against a weak schedule, but what else do you expect? I see that brought up a lot. Oh, it was facing Seattle and Arizona, which he still faces twice a year, by the way. Although Seattle just got Jamal Adams, so maybe that changes things a little bit. You certainly think about that, Jamal Adams on George Kittle. Ooh, Jamal Adams on maybe on Gerald Everett, maybe on Tyler Higbee. It just depends on who's taken more seriously in that passing game. So on the flip side, yes, it took Everett being out. He's going to be back this year. So on one hand, it's priced in when the tight end 1 from December is tight end, what'd you say, 9, 7, whatever, mid-round pick. A lot of that risk is obviously priced in. But then there's this idea that you take Higbee and week 1, week 2, his numbers look like they did in week 1, week 2 last year. Just the idea is he's get 1 catch, 2 catch, 3 catches, even if it is a 2 tight end primarily in the offense. Higbee's not the receiving tight end. That's Everett. So, it's all kind of an all or nothing bet here. Where are you putting your chip?
I'm not putting my chip on Tyler Higbee. That's for sure. And Bloom, maybe it's because Higbee was there. And when Everett was drafted, I was like, all right, I got Tyler Higbee. So we've already known what he could do, but Everett's too good to deny. Everett's too good to put back in the box, so to speak, and just kind of sit on. And Everett is that receiving tight end. Yeah. Whereas Higbee's got more of that size and what do you have, 3 touchdowns, right? So it's not like he came out and had 7 touchdowns and was completely dominant in the red zone. Like, no, Gerald Everett will do too much for me to take Tyler Higbee at tight end 7 or tight end 9 or whatever I said.
I'm inclined to say yes if I don't take an early tight end. I'm more of an early tight end guy. Simply because, and this is the emotional part of fantasy football, I like Tyler Higbee a lot. We talked about coming out of Western Kentucky. I saw some of that Kelsey Gronk kind of energy in him. He was a 4th round pick, but he really on tape was more of a 2nd round pick. He had that incident before the draft.
Yeah, it's some off-field stuff. Hell, he had incidents after the draft. So
true. Yeah. So I have one of those, like, I thought he wasn't on any of my dynasty rosters except for one when he finally did hit. But I still think that, and this is more like on the couch, Trinity on the couch episode, where I'm afraid of, I missed it already, so I'm trying to get it, and I'm going to lose it on the back end too. But you can also get a cheaper tight end later to hedge, or you can take Everett even. Maybe the answer is take Higbee and Everett and see how it sorts itself out. I like the chemistry that Goff and Higbee established. They'd already signed him to an extension before he did that, by the way. So the Rams saw the value in him. But I think this is one of the more interesting questions of the tight end group. And I think Everett, on the other hand, is an afterthought, and maybe that's the answer here, because he was drafted first pick of the Sean McVay regime, not even getting drafted in a lot of drafts, and after week 1 against Dallas, probably a high scoring game, you think, we might find out that was very wrong to let Everett go undrafted.
Speaking of Dallas, there'll be a lot of fantasy GMs that are trying to get Blake Jarwin, early on if they don't draft him late as a tight end too. Just quickly, Bloom, Tyler Higbee's going after Hayden Hurst, which I'm like, Hayden Hurst, and Evan Ingram, who I love, but I can't trust. And then he's going before Hunter Henry and Jared Cook. And Hunter Henry and before Noah Fant, by the way. Yeah. And we'll get to that in the AFC West episode tomorrow. I'm taking Henry, Cook, and Fant all over Higbee.
That's fair. I mean, I don't think any of them have the demonstrated ceiling that he has, but I think that they have a lot better middle case than he has, and I think that the tight end position this year, everybody outside of, where's the cutoff? Like Darren Waller, who I'm actually lower on than most people. So Ingram, somewhere around that top 5 or 6. After that, you can make a glass half water, glass half empty case for all of them, and it's one of the things that'll separate fantasy teams this year. Your tight end choices.
How about a tight end choice in the draft? Bryson Hopkins from Purdue, fluid, I think is the best way to put him. Okay. How's he work into this mix here?
Well, he's a replacement for Everett. That just seems like a 1-for-1 situation where you draft a replacement the year before the guy goes into free agency, and then we can say, well, Gerald Everett would look good in what uniform next year? Right. That's what Bryson Hopkins makes. I think pure receiving tight end, more of a big slot receiver type. So, at least we know that looking ahead, Sean McVay sees this as a 2 tight end offense. Just invest that, at least as one of the main modes for the Rams.
Main mode, main man when it comes to fantasy football. I don't know what that means. But
poetry.
I know what San Francisco means, and it means one of their best players we're not going to see for a while. How does that impact, and can a rookie step up into his place? We'll get to that when we talk about the 49ers and the preseason watch list next. It's more fun with the more robust teams, Bloom.
It is.
We can absolutely have more conversation.
It makes sense. Yeah, they could do something where they check the frequency of our voice, and they can tell how excited or not excited we are about a team. Let's
talk about Matt Ryan. Let's talk about Jimmy Garoppolo in 3, 2, 1. Hey, Jimmy, he's open. Oh, never mind. Jimmy Garoppolo, this close. Yes. Mahomes drive back anyway, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, the 49ers making that run, all coming together for Kyle Shanahan, for John Lynch, and their guy, Jimmy Garoppolo. Hell, even the guy behind him they love, Nick Mullins. That's why they wouldn't get rid of him. Jimmy G coming back for an encore, coming back without Debo. A lot of the times, Bloom, we set up these quarterback conversations, and we can talk just about him. We got to bring up no Debo for the 49ers for some time. With his injury and what that means now leaning on Brandon Ayuk. So let's get to Jimmy G. We'll talk about those running backs. Certainly that situation a little bit different this year. But it comes back to Garoppolo, and now how does he make hay without one of the league's best? Debo was just flashing, just making plays. And now he's going to be sitting on the bench.
And sitting on fantasy benches, by the way, Jimmy Garoppolo. For fantasy, Garoppolo is not that exciting of a topic. He's a middling quarterback too. For DFS, you're going to have certain matchups that you're excited about him. Okay. For redraft, you have him maybe as quarterback too for matchups, but we can look at the playoffs last year. If San Francisco can win without putting a lot on his shoulders, that's what they'll do. And that's what they'll still be able to do, even without DeForest Buckner. So it's much more interesting for me, to talk about my crackpot theory about Jimmy Garoppolo, as we keep alluding to it, that the most memorable play from the Super Bowl was him missing Emmanuel Sanders. Even if it's like the third time I brought this up, even just in the preseason watch list, I don't know. Yeah. That sticks with you. Kyle Shanahan didn't make any secret out of, I was thinking about Tom Brady. We know about the Kirk Cousins affinity, even though Cousins signed with Minnesota for an extension.
Can I add something to that?
Please.
And I want to be very clear because I don't want to get him in trouble. I do a show every day with a former 49ers coach. Okay. So I did not get this from him. In fact, when I told him I knew this, he was like, "Where did you hear that from?"
That's how you know you're
exactly.
Who told you?
Exactly. They were prepared to go to Nick Mullins if Jimmy didn't do what he did last year. Nick Mullins is really high on their list, like really high. They feel they can win. They feel they can make a Super Bowl run with Nick Mullins.
Yeah.
So again, you're mentioning Cousins and Brady, and there's a guy on his own team that they're like, oh, if Jimmy G's not cutting it, we can go to Nick and win a lot of games.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is we don't necessarily usually think of made to the Super Bowl, lost the Super Bowl as what's going to happen with your career arc. But, I think Jimmy's a year-to-year quarterback, and I'm curious how his confidence is affected and the team's confidence in him. Probably it's not shaken initially, but if there's a few games where that pattern repeats itself, that's how it is. That's why we need sports psychologists, right, Cecil? I mean, once that scene plays out once, it's like in our lives, then you almost feel this gravity pulling you back to that, replaying the trauma over and over again and projecting it and even making it come about because of how it's a little shadow on our souls. So, hey, Jimmy, I want to see him rise to the occasion and make those throws. But as we talked about, as you alluded to, Cease, to who, other than George Kittle, wide receivers are an issue, and maybe to who is he handing off week one because of some issues at running back?
Yeah, so issues abound here for this team. And okay, Nick Mullins, CJ Beathard, I think that they love Mullins, and Beathard is one they would move on from if they got the right offer. So again, we've got Jonah's in the chat room. Dynasty stash? Oh, you bet.
Yeah,
you bet.
And we saw Mullins as a third stringer. That was one of those things where Kyle Shanahan kept that offense viable with the third stringer Mullins. And Mullins showed that at the very least he can be a solid backup quarterback. And with the proliferation of Kyle Shanahan ideas on offense, there's a lot of teams now that Nick Mullins could. We speculated about whether Denver would get him last year because of his ability to mesh with Rich Gangarello, who's in Philadelphia now. So, these are definitely things to think about for the future. And Nick Mullins, if he's not on your Superflex Dynasty roster, he's on a free agent list, waiver wire, take care of that.
Take care of it. Take care of the backfield. Jerick McKinnon's actually might play. We might actually see him after 2 years of not seeing him. Restructures his deal to stick around. Of course, this team moving on with Matt Breida going down to the Dolphins. Raheem Mostert's still there. Tevin Coleman's still there. Jerick McKinnon there. Jeffrey Wilson. He can make some plays as well. Like, okay, welcome to the 49ers backfield. Welcome to the crowd.
Yeah, it is a crowd. And, there was one player who really put himself head and shoulders above the crowd at the end of the year, right? Raheem Mostert. 4 touchdowns in the NFC title game. And even going into the playoffs, Kyle Shanahan, he likes him some Tevin Coleman. They were kind of equals. Now, we talked about Sean McVay wanting to emulate Kyle Shanahan, having it sorted out by merit. You start out with balance, you start out with a committee, and then as players show they deserve touches. What more does Raheem Mostert need to do to show that he deserves to be the lead back? And we have a potential holdout, right? Because Raheem Mostert, through his agent, saying, I'm not going to show up unless I get paid like Tevin Coleman, which is just a couple $1 million. Cut CJ Beathard, hold on to CJ Beathard or make the best running back on your roster happy. It's not that hard. It shouldn't be that hard, but now it becomes some principle because Raheem Mostert said, well, I'm not going to show up without getting a modest raise. He's not asking to get a new contract with $20 million guaranteed or something.
Right. This isn't Dalvin Cook money.
No. So you would think that the 49ers, even though they don't like these kinds of tactics, NFL teams don't, NFL decision makers don't, come on, And they've tried to smooth things over. There's no resolution here. Mostert may play for his special teams money anyway, just so that he can maybe get a raise down the line, or he may sit out. That adds uncertainty, but Cease, that's been more than reflected in ADP. Where he might have been more of a 4th, 5th round pick. Now it's more like 5th, 6th, or especially when you see him falling in a draft like the 7th round. I mean, at that point, because we know if he and the 49ers kiss and make up, even if he just shows up, Cease, back up to where he was before, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe even a little higher if they give him money. If they give him money, now you're like, okay, well, they really are trying to show that they have a commitment to him. So this is that classic buy on the dip situation. And if you're left holding nothing because he holds out for the whole season or something, so be it. That's the risk. But you're going to get the best running back in an efficient running game. Should you pivot to Tevin Coleman? 8th, 9th, 10th round pick. I still think we've seen the best of Tevin Coleman. I mean, he can collect touchdowns, but that's about it. Because you still have, Jeffrey Wilson can be a player who does some things. Jerick McKinnon can step in and be the 3rd down back if he stays healthy. Or maybe Jermichael Hasty. We'll get to that. So I think it's Mostert or bust if you're going to dabble in this running game and try to take advantage of the uncertainty.
You said dabble. By the way, Mostert's a 6th round pick.
Yeah.
So, and then look at the players that are going in front of him and players that are going behind him. Like there's an island there. It's like Raheem Mostert. It's screaming at you. Running back 28, 5'11" right now, behind Cam Akers, behind Kareem Hunt, in front of DeAndre Swift, and in front of Damian Williams. Those are the backs around him. Dave Montgomery's going off the board before Raheem Mostert. Like, I would way rather take a chance on Mostert, knowing that it could just be a 0 if he never shows up, than Montgomery, who I appreciate his instincts, just not enough juice. Let's talk about juice in the backfield, though, Bloom, because you mentioned him. Jermichael Hasty is there, and you mentioned Jeffrey Wilson too. But plenty of juice in this backfield. Yeah,
absolutely. And McKinnon could be interesting as a 3rd down back with some fleeting value if he shows he can even do more than that.
Look at what he did. Look at what he did with Pat Shurmur when Dalvin Cook was down and Latavius Murray and Jerick McKinnon were in there.
Shanahan, Shanahan's judgment running backs, remember Joe Williams? Shanahan's judgment running backs giving the money to McKinnon, it could be questionable, but it wasn't like he was just a complete slouch, just a guy. Hasty, classic 3rd down back. So if we hear McKinnon goes down again, Hasty's the guy to step in there. Wilson, not a 3rd down back, but has shown that he deserves to be on an NFL roster. And he, of course, had that pivotal play in the game against the Saints. So I always remember him for, it was like that one play. Like you go in for one play, and the one play is a play where you have to turn as a running back after you run a route and get the ball, and it's been thrown before you turn. And you don't even really get to see the ball getting released because of it was a blind throw. I'm sorry, Garoppolo didn't get to see Wilson, and Wilson didn't get to see Garoppolo. They just trusted the play, trust each other to execute, and Wilson made one of the biggest plays of that game, which in turn gave them home field advantage, and so on and so forth, butterfly wings. So I'll remember him for that. Still might be on the roster bubble if McKinnon is healthy.
This 49ers team, lots of talent they're in. And the great thing that you need to remember, Bloom, you think there's egos on the field. There's egos in the front office. There's egos in the coaching staff. And when you pay a guy, even if he restructures his deal to stick around, you want to, we were right. We were right. Now McKinnon's healthy. We were right. So just keep that in your mind. Put it like a pencil in your ear, like Matt Patricia, except not looking like that. Hey, there's Juszczyk. We can talk about him a little bit if you want.
Yeah. Well, everybody wants to Juszczyk. It's Salvin Ahmed, a very athletic, undrafted free agent, but I don't think he's in line to make it over Jermichael Hasty. But it's a Shanahan, so we always pay attention to every undrafted running back name.
Yes, all of them. Now the wide receiver position. There's Brandon Ayuk. And again, talk to Herm Edwards, not only about Benjamin, but also about Brandon Ayuk, Bloom, as their college coach. And Ayuk is all about run after the catch. This was the guy. And, mock drafts could say things differently, right? I think I had the 49ers mocked with a different wide receiver. Can't remember if it was Jalen Reagor, whoever it was, but this was their target. This was their guy. Now, if you put Jerry Jeudy in front of him, whatever, maybe that's a different story. But this was the player they wanted. They got him. But you got him thinking it would work in tandem with Deebo Samuel and look at this 1-2 punch and blah, 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 and the rookie. And then we bring up Corona. We bring up ramping up. there's going to be a lot on the plate for Brandon Ayuk, who's not a polished guy, but is a toy with you after the catch, toy with you before the catch type of guy. How does that work now that he's kind of their number one?
Yes. Well, and we're going to talk about Debo.
Let's talk about Debo.
I'll tuck the Debo take in here. Okay. Debo, you would have been excited about him, like 6th, 7th, 8th round type pick. Now with his foot, they're not going to rush him back. They saw what happened with Trent Taylor last year. They're not going to rush him back. Okay. Mid-October, early October, he's going to miss some games. It makes it hard to be excited about him. But there is a point in your draft where it makes sense to take him. 10th, 11th round, maybe, because Debo was really breaking out. And in one of those situations where Shanahan was calling plays that he could add value to. It was looking very good. What's funny, is they move up to take Brandon Ayuk. They give up a 4th and a 5th just to move up like 5 picks to make sure they get Brandon Ayuk. I mean, if they were asking me, he'd say he's probably going to be there at number 30. You're probably okay. Hold on to the 4th and 5th. They really like him. But when they took him, I thought, well, he's a lot like Debo Samuel. It's a similar guy. And, Ayuk getting off press coverage, not so sure. But you said run after catch, kind of an imposing athlete with the ball in his hands. So maybe he could get off to a great early start. But then, you start to look down the depth chart, and don't you just see this as kind of wide receiver by committee, in the sense that different weeks, different game plans, different receivers will shine, and it's going to be a low volume pass offense anyway. So not as exciting as the running backs to talk about, I think.
No, not as exciting, but interesting. I mean, interesting names.
Yeah.
Even Juwan Jennings. We're going to go straight down the depth chart. I mean, that's a guy that springs to that top. And I saw Juwan Jennings on the All-Star road trip, and he stood out. A Tennessee receiver is always going to get attention, but Juwan Jennings was a standout player. And I believe it was at the Senior Bowl, top of my head. He wasn't at the Shrine Bowl because that was Jalen Johnson, the Oregon kid. But Juwan Jennings, he springs to mind. They love Kendrick Bourne. So we'll see. They don't love Dante Pettis. Do you want all the inside scoop? Dante Pettis probably not going to make the team. They love Kendrick Bourne. There's Trent Taylor, now that he's healthy, Bloom. So again, it's almost your specialty. I sound like Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's my specialty. They have receivers with each individual skill sets that they can use almost just as a role based on that play.
Yes, and let's go down the list, right? First, we got to mention Kendrick Bourne, because I think that he could even get an extension at some point. He just plays assignment football really well in this offense, and they like him in the red zone too. Kendrick Bourne, the classic, not going to create fantasy value of his own, but also could keep other wide receivers from generating sustained fantasy value. So he's going to make the team, okay? By the way, Richie James, my man, also hurt. Jalen Hurd's going to make the team. Jalen Hurd, big slot, maybe goal line running back. They're very excited about him, has had a back issue that has worked itself out. But also in the slot, Trent Taylor, who, depending who you ask, may lead the wide receivers in targets. They really like him. He's a classic slot receiver, is going to get open. You have to think he fits Garoppolo's game well. So those 5 make the team. Then it's not as sure. You have Dante Pettis. I mean, it's now or never.
No.
I mean, it's probably an underdog to make the team. I mean, he can save his roster spot. He can reclaim a role in this offense, but it's up to him. Hopefully he finds a coach who's not so worried about a finesse player. I think there's still a lot there. Dante Pettis showed he can play in the NFL. But confidence, right? We talk about confidence. You mentioned Juwan Jennings. More of a practice slot. I love Juwan Jennings. I mean, how many slot receivers can we say are big bullies?
Right.
I mean, that's just
he's
his
a bully
game.
slot.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful the way he runs routes, the way he is after the catch, the way he is at the catch point. I don't care what his measurables were. He can play. He's going to eventually be on an NFL field. I like him with a fit with his team. And then there's Travis Benjamin. We still got Travis Benjamin around. But because of Richie James' injury, now Benjamin can make the team as a return specialist. So, that costs a Dante Pettis a spot, a chance to rehabilitate himself. So lots of interesting names, diverse talents, maybe not a lot of persistent fantasy value.
Persistent fantasy value is the name of the game with George Kittle. Now you got to pay the man. So there you go. But Kittle, not a lot of nuance, especially with these wide receiver questions, Bloom. Does it just mean more Kittle?
Yeah, right. I mean, isn't just going after Kelsey? I'm fine with Kelsey or Kittle around ADP. And remember, he played through a gnarly injury last year. He actually finished the game and had a good fantasy game. The game he got hurt, and he barely missed any time with. I'm sure an injury a lot of guys would have missed more time with. And extremely productive touchdown. You like positive touchdown regression, Cease? Like when a guy gets a lot of opportunities but not a lot of touchdowns, you think he's going to get more touchdowns somehow eventually. Got to think that with one George Kittle, joy to watch. There's just that mold at tight end where a guy goes about his game with a greatness, not just a physical greatness, but determination and joy in his game. He's another one of these tight ends, like a Gronk, like a Kelsey, who just plays with a little spring in his step and joy. And I, for one, will be happy for him when he gets paid. He deserves to be the highest paid tight end of the game. He deserves to be paid like a wide receiver. They're 16, 17, 18 million a year. And, TJ Hawkinson can only hope to become George Kittle to keep that Iowa tight end line going. Of course, Noah Fant could do that too.
Nah. More on that on tomorrow's show. You want to talk about Ross Dwelly or you want to talk about The Last Dance?
Well, hey, Ross Dwelly had some value for fantasy when Kittle was out. So, there's value just from the 49ers tight end role. Daniel Helm is more of a receiving tight end. Charlie Werner, who they drafted, is just straight up a blocker. Yes, now we have a few minutes. Let's go.
Okay, well, it is Jordan's version of the story.
Yeah.
And I love Michael Jordan, and I don't care.
So right. It's entertaining. Of course it's entertaining.
His production company ran the thing.
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to get into the things you could get into, and, not any corroborated reports or anything, but you could get into the rumors and all that around. Was it really suspension when he went to play baseball? Like, man, The Last Dance is phenomenal. Although the first episode I watched, I didn't know there was an edited and an unedited version, and my DVR recorded both. So I just pressed play. I was like, what? Play, and it was the unedited, and then the second episode I watched the unedited, and I was like, why wasn't that like in the first episode? So yeah, it's great. It's great to see that behind the scenes. It's as much as the peak of the curtain that we get, Bloom. So that's why I'll take it. Like, I don't care if it's Jordan's story, because it clearly is, but I don't care.
And it's very entertaining, but it's entertainment. It's not a documentary. Okay. That's the thing. It's entertainment. And let me go.
How many documentaries can you say that about too?
Well, that's fair. But look, let me just get right down to let me get right down to it. This is the Easter egg content in the 49ers preseason watch list. The tangent. Make this the first one in our tangent episode, preseason watch list tangents. Jordan comes off as not at all a genuine human being. Not at all a genuine human being. There are a few moments whenever, like sometimes when they show him the tablet and he's watching something, there's
the letter, his mom reading the letters. Stuff like that.
There's a few moments that he's watching some other NBA player like say something
like Gary
about
Payton
him.
When he's laughing at Gary Payton, who's one of the greatest defensive players ever.
Right, and you see him react to something in a way that it's not processed or packaged for us or managed. Like, you can tell that he's like really thinking about it, and those are some of the genuine moments. But like Lance Armstrong, which I think they showed Lance Armstrong like right after this, right?
Yeah, and nobody watched because nobody cares.
Well, because of that story's been done already. But like one Lance Armstrong, that you can tell that Jordan has told himself a story about himself all along that really shapes everything that he thinks about everything in his life. And when Jordan is telling you his story, he's trying to get you to buy in to his version of all the events around him. And I think that's one of the things that, for me, as I was watching it, that I couldn't help be reminded of over and over and over again. That if Scottie Pippen, if other people, Dennis Rodman and so on, in this story, the Dennis Rodman 30 for 30 is great, by the way. It would be a different version. I mean, just that there were other people in this story that if we saw their version of it, it would be very different. And probably all along, Michael Jordan would just be insisting that they were lying or that never happened, because that was one of the things about Michael Jordan. It's like, oh, that didn't actually. This is one of the things about the Lance Armstrong thing. Same thing. It's like, and then it got personal. So that thing that never actually happened. I just told myself that happened to get like really fired up.
And man, if I'm Scott Burrell, I'm like, Jordan. They keep showing Scott Burrell. They're like,
yeah. Well, he's just kind of a bully. Jordan's a bully. But he wins, and I mean that's just one of those things. And again, Lance Armstrong, Michael Jordan,
and they didn't make Scotty look that. Of course, Scotty and quitting when Kukoc got that last shot, like it's 90s basketball, man. That's where it was at. And now today's NBA. I was watching some of the NBA highlights, and it's like 6 steps. You can take 6 steps and dunk, and they don't call travel. Oh, whatever. Yeah, it's just today's basketball is. I don't know, just not as entertaining. I don't want to insult you if you're an NBA fan, but like 90s basketball was where it was at.
I mean, I haven't watched a lot of NBA since then, but it's okay. I don't begrudge people what they enjoy, and I like Zion Williamson. I like the Pelicans. Go Pels. They got something good brewing down here.
Okay, and that is a wrap for the 49ers.
At least we don't do this in every episode. We do kind of do it in every episode.
We do kind of. So sorry. That's our bad. 49ers wrapping tying a bow on the NFC West with a trip to the Northwest for Seattle. That's next. That wasn't a very good tease, but whatever. All right, let's go. 3, 2, 1. Russell Wilson. I feel like this is the Kyler Murray take. Russell Wilson, the number 1 fantasy quarterback at the end of the year? I wouldn't be surprised. Of course, you're taking him as a top 5 fantasy quarterback anyway, and everything that they can do. And by the way, the talent that they have yet to add, we are recording this on July 26th, Bloom. In case they add, Josh Gordon, Antonio Brown. That hasn't happened yet, right? Make sure that doesn't happen during the show, but it just ties back into Russell Wilson. There's not a lot of nuance here. There's not a lot of mystery to unravel. It's R-Dub, man. It's little Russell Wilson. He's making plays. He's getting it done.
And he can do more. We saw his efficiency go down a little bit. We saw his attempts go up last year, and he's still going to be that perennial top 5, top 6 quarterback. Hear a little bit of lobbying for them to open up the offense more. Cecil was all prepared like yesterday to say Seattle's defense isn't going to be very good, so that could help Russell Wilson. And then they go and trade a couple of firsts for Jamal Adams. Sidetrack, but a Seattle-related sidetrack. Adams deal, first blush, thumbs up, thumbs down?
Thumbs up. You add a playmaker like that, you're in that window, right? Dude. Like, it's, again, here's my window talk. Like, everyone's like, why would you do that for a safety?
So much!
So you can win a Super Bowl. Sorry, Joe. So you can win a blanking Super Bowl. That's why you do that move. It's John Schneider, man. I'm not going to go against John Schneider. Like, seriously, people need to get out of this notion. This isn't fantasy football. And my God, my hair looks awful today. But this isn't fantasy football, right? I know we're talking fantasy football, but the Jamal Adams deal is because you can win a Super Bowl. Yeah. You're that good. You are there. And you got to kill those tight ends, man. We talked about it in the 49ers episode.
Exactly.
Come on, people.
All this stuff. And he can help with the pass rush. He's not a safety. He's a different... look what Minka Fitzpatrick did for the Steelers. That trade is so good. Anytime I feel sad about anything sports related, I just remember the Steelers traded a first round pick for Minka Fitzpatrick. But look, okay, Adams. It's like this: 2 firsts and a bump from 2022 fourth to 2021 third, and Bradley McDougald. So if it was the 2021 draft, and Adams was a top 5 pick and still looked like he deserved to be a top 5 pick. So if Seattle was still picking in the playoff picks, which is a bit of presumption, and they gave up next year's first and a bump in the mid round and Bradley McDougald to move up to the top 5 to take a top 5 player, people would say, well, that makes sense, right? Next year's first, a mid-level starter, another small pick bump. That's about the price to move up from the end of the first to the beginning of the first and get one of those potentially elite talents. And yes, Adams is 3 years into his deal, but you got a top 5 player. It's like you take a top 5 pick with the hopes he turns into someone like Jamal Adams. And this is a team that knows how to use a player like him, a la Cam Chancellor, but he can do even more than Cam Chancellor. And your 2021 pick, if we're thinking of it in these terms, helps you today, helps you right now. Seattle's like $39 million under the $175 million cap floor next year. Oh, what are you going to pay Jamal Adams? You use your cap room to add players who help you win games. Mm-hmm. So, yes, and it's really funny, see, on the Jets side, it's like they got all these picks, so when Joe Douglas hires a new coach, that will be easier.
Right.
But if that's how you're thinking, which is probably rational, Where is your franchise? Oh, if Sam Darnold ends up not doing it this year, now they have the picks to get another quarterback. But again, like, well, if the quarterback and coach that we just restructured our whole franchise around fail, at least we have something to dig ourselves out. So that's the two sides of this trade. We're trying to win a Super Bowl. We're trying to have a plan to clean up the mess that we know that we're in. And Russell Wilson is the reason you're in a Super Bowl window. He can put you in a fantasy Super Bowl window, especially if they get an Antonio Brown or a Josh Gordon. They did get Greg Olsen. Certainly this is a quarterback that I think is priced fairly at fantasy that can help you if you don't want to go elite quarterback. And dare I say, he's underrated, I think, for fantasy and in NFL circles.
Yeah, for sure. And Lord knows why. I don't know why. Like, what more does he have to do? So, okay, he's going to be helped out by the rushing attack. Now, the rushing attack with Carlos Hyde, I like that move. I like that move a lot for this team. Rashad Penny's just never worked out. Never should have been a first-round pick. I mean, Lord knows me and San Diego State players, not just running backs. I mean, I love him, but he should have never been a first-round pick, ever. And, hurt forever. Chris Carson's hurt all the time, but when he's not hurt, he's pretty good. And then Carlos Hyde's steady. That's what I did last year. Bloom, I got a hot DJ Dallas take, but let's save that. Let's talk about Chris Carson. Let's talk about Carlos Hyde. And I guess Penny might play this year sometime. Whatever.
Yeah. And we'll just say hi, Geno Smith, who they re-signed to be the backup quarterback there. But hey, see preseason watch list. We should just mention Anthony Gordon as an undrafted free agent that could be the backup soon. Like, Washington State throw lots of passes.
He could be their Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. Chris Carson, third, fourth round pick. He showed that he deserves that. I mean, we know Chris Carson produces when he's lead running back. I know he's got another injury. We're going to watch his hip and see how that goes coming back into training camp and ramping up. But Chris Carson has been there, done that. It's kind of like James Conner. So if you're not going to take a running back early, or you get your running back 2 in the third, fourth round, in Carson and Conner, you got guys that been there, done that, with injury worries, but I'll take that. I think that's overpriced into their value there. You have Carlos Hyde, who again is that obstruction to someone else having fantasy value more than having fantasy value himself. I think that they just they know Penny's not going to be ready for the season. It was a pretty complex injury that Penny suffered late in the season. Kind of coming on, but I still think not worth the first round pick. That's why another reason, by the way, Seattle takes players that other people have like in the third or fourth round on their board in the first round. So sure, trade the first round picks. Come on, look at him.
Avoid the temptation.
Right. Jordan Brooks and Jermaine Ifedi and so on and so forth. So, in this backfield, I think that we were hoping maybe Marshawn Lynch would come back. This is my son, just trying to come up with as many reasons as possible to say it. And they have these other guys, right? 2 guys that actually competed with each other for playing time. See, Travis Homer and DJ Dallas. And I think if we get a load of either of those guys, we might say, why did they spend on Carlos Hyde? They didn't need to.
Yeah, and they have a style of running back, Bloom, and Rashad Penny, because Penny's the one that doesn't really fit. When you go it's like in kindergarten, we're like, which one of these is different? It's like you look at Rashad Penny and he's different from the other guys, because especially DJ Dallas. I mean, his game is all about intent. There's no, it's not pretty. It's just, I'm going to smash into you and try to run through you. So again, Bloom, I'm watching all these. If it was a normal preseason, I would be watching these with great intent.
Yeah. Well, Homer, remember, had great numbers as far as measurables. He's a third down back type. Got in a little bit at the end of the year, didn't do a lot to impress. And then DJ Dallas, who they turn around and take this year, and not an insignificant thing when you spend a fourth round pick on a running back. When you spend a pick in the fourth round on a running back, he's going to probably make the team. So that's something to watch. Dallas versus Homer, or do they keep both? And he's going to contribute. Now, Dallas can contribute on special teams. Maybe that's part of where they see him fitting in there. Spelling Tyler Lockett as a punt returner or something like that. Another third down back type. So I think these are guys that can at some point be that receiving running back like Boston Scott has done for the Eagles. Don't know that the Seahawks see a big role for that kind of running back. Remember, they had J.D. McKissick. So like them, as you mentioned, as we've mentioned so many times, Cecil, a typical preseason watch list year with preseason DFS, we'd say, I can't wait to watch this guy this coming month, maybe later in the season than if injuries or later down the line. These are still names to remember.
I know how we can talk about Marshawn Lynch.
My president.
Westworld season 3 recap show.
Ooh, what?
Yeah, he was good. He was good in Westworld.
He was in it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Giggles was his character's name.
Nice.
Had a shirt that lit up. It had different sayings on it, and whatever mood he was in, that was what was lit up.
Nice.
So, yeah,
I like
there
that.
we go.
Where do I get one of those?
eBay. Except they don't light up. Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. Let's talk about these guys, but let's talk about what could happen. Josh Gordon, not as much, right? Gordon, role player, whatever. I don't think he'd take a lot away. I don't think there's much there. But Antonio Brown, if AB didn't have that video with Russell, if it doesn't happen on video, it didn't happen. Yeah. We had that video with Russell Wilson on that field with the picket or the little white rail fence around it. I was like, man, you got to move that fence back. Somebody's gonna get hurt. But yeah, if Antonio Brown's added to this, how does that change our normal Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf takes?
It probably lowers their weekly floor, but still they have the same weekly ceiling because they're both big play downfield receivers. You have to wonder if that's going to happen now with the latest back and forth with Antonio Brown and himself, Antonio Brown in the league. But Seattle makes sense for Antonio Brown. It's the come back, we give you a fresh start organization. And again, he's worked out. They've done with Russell Wilson, they've done some work on him to check him out and see. But then Josh Gordon's already been with the organization. And he makes sense too, as you said, for fantasy outlooks. We probably are rooting for Gordon more than Brown if you have Lockett or if you have Metcalf. I think both Metcalf and Lockett are underrated. They're underrated because they get to catch Russell Wilson passes. You know, these are some of the most valuable passes that a wide receiver can get, especially with a running game and their ability to throw the ball deep off of play action or Russell Wilson extending the play. So as it is, I think that Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are both underrated in fantasy circles. 5th round pick, you can get them. Maybe either of them can put up a week-winning line for you in any given week. And Metcalf is only going to get better. So on one hand, you have Metcalf, who was worth plugging into your lineup every week at least, and vastly outproduced expectations as a rookie and stayed healthy too. That was a big thing, right? That's one of the reasons people say, who's never going to stay healthy? It doesn't matter. He could start to, dare I say, Cecil, I'm not necessarily saying for fantasy, okay, but he's getting closer to that Calvin Johnson, AJ Green, Julio Jones stratosphere in the sense that athletically, he's the most impressive guy on the field. Like athletically, he can do things that nobody else can. And that's exciting. So he could be a player now with confidence that might take a huge step forward this year. And the next thing you know, next year, we're talking about him as a top 10 pick of wide receiver. Tyler Lockett was already a top 10 wide receiver last year before he got hurt. Now, he gets hurt. That's still part of the picture. But you get a guy who can be a top 10 receiver when he's healthy as what? You know, your wide receiver 20, 25? Yes. Sign me up. So getting them on your team is getting a piece of Russell Wilson. I'm fine with that. I totally endorse taking Saints receivers.
Totally endorse taking Seattle receivers. And
sorry, did I say that?
Yeah, you got the Saints on the mind. David Moore, Philip Dorsett.
Right.
Aaron Fuller. Whatever. Let's move down the depth chart, though, and talk about the rest of these guys, just in case Lockett gets banged up and they don't get AB or Josh Gordon, what have you.
Right, and that's the thing, is you're thinking this, by the time you listen to this, maybe has been upgraded. David Moore can make some plays. As a rookie, an unheralded rookie, made some plays. He went up and made some high wire act kind of stuff, and he's in line to get wide receiver 3 snaps along with Philip Dorsett.
How many chances is Dorsett going to get to be
like? Well, he can still do what he does, you know.
Yes, but I'm going to prove everybody wrong. 12 catches. Right. I'm going to prove everybody wrong. Now, he did have the 5 TDs last year, but still, like, it seems like I've heard the Philip Dorsett, like, this is the year he proves everybody.
Yeah, exactly. God. This is the year he proves again that he can provide some speed in the slot, but otherwise is just a role player. So, you got local Aaron Fuller, John Ursua, who may not make the team because they took another slot receiver, Freddie Swain, in the late rounds. And the best of them all, Cease, is Penny Hart. I mean, that's the guy. If I'm going to do a preseason watch list take here, it is Penny Hart. You were talking about Andy Isabella. You were telling the story about Andy Isabella's
And
Senior
Penny
Bowl.
was better than him.
He
at
was,
the Senior Bowl.
Penny Hart was the guy. You're like, wow, if Andy Isabella looked like that, running routes and getting releases and just stacking his guy, getting in the route stem and putting pressure on his guy. Now Andy Isabella is like a first-round pick, So Penny Hart's still hanging around.
Mm-hmm. And preseason watch list will be hanging around watching him in our minds.
Yeah.
Hey. Greg Olsen, Will Dissly. Okay. Dissly, if he's ever healthy, he's going to make some plays. He's never healthy. Now
Right.
Greg Olsen comes over. What's left in the tank? How's this split go down? I mean, I still have love for Jacob Hollister, just like as a dude, right? But man alive, got to score that touchdown, Jacob. Got to score that touchdown for Seattle, right? I mean, you're right there. You're as close can be. And that's the type of play you expect a kid to make. And then he doesn't. So anyway, let's talk about Greg Olsen, what he's got left, and what that means for Will Dissly.
Man, the NFC Seattle could have been the number 1 seed. New Orleans, one play, like all these one plays.
Yep.
Greg Olsen will be in our mind as a color guy. Was it Fox that signed him for next year or whenever he retires? I look forward to that. I'm higher on Greg Olsen, the color guy in the booth, than Greg Olsen, the fantasy tight end this year. But it is Russell Wilson, and Greg Olsen can still play. So as an early season waiver wire watch list guy, or even somebody to look at in DFS, I'm interested in Greg Olsen. As you said, Will Dissly drafted as a blocking tight end. Like that's the last time. We always have to add now when guys are drafted as blocking tight ends. Well, they could be Will Dissly. Maybe there's something there that they didn't discover, because with Dissly, his production is unquestioned. His ability to make plays is unquestioned. So just watch him. Olsen goes down because he's in that winter of his career. Then Dissly could be someone we think about, and then Jacob Hollister, who was consistent last year from a fantasy standpoint. Now he's got that, I think, second round RFA tender, $3+ million. If Dissly's healthy, probably you're letting Hollister go, and he should catch on somewhere else. The rare trade Bill Belichick loses there is, nothing, couch cushion change, like 7th round pick, and they could have used Hollister last year. They could use Hollister this year. Maybe that's where he ends up. How many teams have 3? Well, I guess Tampa. So there's your New England connection. 3 viable receiving tight ends. So that's Seattle this year. And again, Seahawks, they got the Kraken, the Seattle Kraken. And now they have Jamal Adams lurking in the depths of the defense, ready to come up and put his tentacle around Kyler Murray, around George Kittle, around whoever the Rams are throwing the ball to a tight end. So it's exciting. Seattle football got more exciting. NFC West football got more exciting. And now it's going to be a Broncos show.
It is, but it's always a Steelers show. I love how our Steelers fans comes out and they always just chime in. I'm going to chime in right here. So preseason watch list concludes tomorrow. If you check us out and listen to us on iTunes and Spotify and all that good stuff, however you enjoy your podcast, we certainly appreciate that. We definitely have an incredibly large audience on those platforms. So it's humbling. We just appreciate everyone out there for listening. And as you've noticed, I'm trying to edit and release 4 of these a day until I get caught up. So I think I'm like 12, 16 behind now. Today will make 16. So I'm get another 4 edited and thrown out there today for the masses. But we certainly appreciate you. And you never know what's going to be revealed on a Broncos show. How's that for a tease?
Ooh.
He's Sigmund Bloom. I'm Cecil Lammey. We are the Audible. Everyone out there, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned. And as always, you better stay frosty.